It is time for our monthly Scars Survivor Hour. Joining us on the phone as always, we have Debbie Ray Rivers, and we have the good Dr. Hancock in studio with us here. And we're about to get underway. Debbie, good to have you on board again as always.
Thank you, Shelley. Hi, everyone. Hi, Bermuda. Hi, Dr. Hancock.
Hi, Debbie.
Yeah, well, let's get right into this. I'm just going to say for those who do not know who we are, and perhaps you just tuned in to Power 95, Scars Survivor Hour Radio is just another platform for us to spread awareness and to be an advocate and a voice for children who've been sexually molested, as well as their affected family. That is the Scars mission in our community, is to reduce risk and to be an advocate. Survivor Hour is an opportunity to help listeners understand child sexual abuse and the traumatic effects that it can have on children and their affected families. I want to begin by thanking our sponsor, the Conduit Foundation, for sponsoring this show. We are always grateful to them, their loyalty and their financial support through our work in child protection. So thank you, Conduit Foundation. So today, Dr. Hancock and I are going to talk about the impact on parenting through our own scars of sexual abuse. We know that parenting is hard at the best of times. Now think about parenting a child whilst carrying the scars from child sexual abuse, right? That is not easy.
Yep.
Our hope is that this show will help our survivors out there who are parents to feel seen, to feel understood, and to feel supported. Because the fact is, child sexual abuse trauma can affect how we parent. And that can be in terms of trust challenges, boundaries, fear, and sometimes emotional outbursts and responses to things in our life that are not easy. And so the good news, though, is that parenting, I know as a survivor of child sexual abuse myself and a mom of two survivors, I know that, the good news is parenting can also become part of our healing journey of breaking cycles, of giving our own children not only protection, but, especially for our survivors who have little children, there's hope on giving your own children protection, but also a voice that we didn't have when we were young because of a lack of prevention education, I believe, and awareness. So before we get into the conversation, I'm just going to remind everyone, as we do every month, about our broadcasting rules. This show does contain sensitive information. It's talking about child sexual abuse. It's intended for adults only. And I want to say, for any adult survivor listening this afternoon, we say this every month, you can change the radio channel because this is not easy. And we want you to take care of yourself. When we are little people, we don't have choices. But when we're adults, we do. And you have the choice and the power today to decide you're not going to listen to this, and that's okay. Your well-being always comes first, and that's important to Scars. And taking care of you is what matters most. So we want to make sure you're in control of that decision. But this stuff isn't easy. It really isn't. The number here, if you want to call in at Power 95, is 292-9595. When calling into the show, we just ask our callers, do not mention your name or a perpetrator's name. We want you to be mindful that we have no way of vetting stories. Please, no personal attack if you call in. This show is meant to educate and empower and advocate for children and for our adult survivors. If you do have a childhood story of sexual abuse, we'd love you to share. We have a platform for that. That's this platform, Survivor Hour Radio or Survivor Hour TV. So please reach out to me, and we can have a conversation about that. It can be anonymous if you want to share your experience, your lived experience. My email is Debbie, DEBI, 4 letters, DEBI, at scars.bm. Please remember, we're not legal experts. We can't answer questions about the legal system. We can answer questions about surviving sexual abuse, because that's what I've done, and how trauma affects victims of child sexual abuse, because Dr. Hancock is the expert in that. But we're not legal experts. We also ask that there be no attack on any lawyer, judge, or magistrate. So thank you, everyone, for understanding and respecting our broadcasting rules. Okay, Dr. Hancock, let's get right into parenting through our own scars.
Yeah, yep. You know, it's quite a tough topic, and hopefully resonates with some people that are listening. You know, many survivors grow up carrying invisible wounds into adulthood, and, you know, so many don't get the opportunity to heal even at the basic level. And so when they become parents, those wounds can resurface in unexpected ways. I think many times with survivors who become parents, there, I think, can be an idealized version that, oh, you know, this is my chance to protect my child the way I wasn't protected, and think it's going to feel powerful and you know, like a superhero, not realizing that, you know, it can trigger a lot of the trauma and symptoms of trauma can resurface through fear. Overprotection, anxiety, trust issues, emotional triggers, and even difficulty showing affection. You know, there's a lot. So it's, you know, and it's not, so this show is really, it's not just about trauma. It's also about healing. It's about understanding. And, you know, most importantly, it's about breaking cycles and raising healthy, emotionally safe children despite their own painful beginnings.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
you know, I didn't realize it affected my parenting, obviously, until I started doing this work, and recognizing the scars from my own experience of child sexual abuse. You know, because we didn't have training years ago. Nobody talked about this. We weren't educated in prevention, and a lot of times, many of us survivors just pushed it down. I know I did. Like, I just pushed down my trauma, you know, and everything was good. I had my daughters in the early 1990s, so there was definitely no educational awareness, let alone trauma wasn't even a word. I don't even remember that word, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, you know, looking back, I can clearly see those effects, you know, and how, and in thinking about doing, in you know, really preparing for this show, I was thinking, like, when you push down trauma, you know, I was just in mommy mode. Yeah. Right? You're busy, you're tired, you're trying to balance life. So dealing with trauma wasn't even really a thought. I didn't even understand that. But I did ask my daughters about this, and I said, you know, do you think my sexual abuse trauma, now that you know about it, do you think it affected me raising you? And I had two different answers, to be honest. My oldest daughter, she said, Mom, you know, I wrote it down. She said, you stuffed your abuse down and anything would have been unconscious, how it affected parenting us. She said, but the overprotectiveness, when it came to boys and the opposite sex is what I remember. She said there was a hypervigilance and a paranoia around being around the opposite sex. Maybe also your perfectionism. You wanted us to be perfect. And she said I was always conscious of myself trying to be perfect and to act perfect and to do things like that. And that was my oldest daughter. And then my youngest said that she felt I became strict and overprotective after I found out about their abuse. She was 10 years old when I found out. So she didn't remember before that, but she felt like that all happened after they were abused. Then I became, you know, because they were 10 and 13. So then that became a big deal. After that, but there are those associations, you know, and I think everybody's experience is different.
Yeah. I mean, and as we know, you know, childhood sexual experience, it doesn't end when childhood ends, right? It continues on, you know, because your entire life changes, you know, and some things you're conscious of, and some things, you know, or you're not. So the only thing many times a trauma victim can do is react to the emotion in the moment, because, you know, as you know, you're constantly in fight or flight mode, protective mode. And so having children that you're responsible for just amplifies all of the emotion, or it can. I'm not saying this is for everybody. But, you know, for many survivors, parenting becomes one of the first times they truly realize how vulnerable children are. And that realization can awaken buried emotions. You know, so as your daughters had said, you know, parents can become extremely protective hypervigilant, become fearful of leaving children with anybody. There is nobody like that, in people that, in my experience working with clients, leaving children with other people is just not. Sleepovers, absolutely not. And that's many times a norm nowadays, where many parents will not let their children sleep over to anybody's house. But that feeling is now amplified even for parents who are survivors.
Yes. And you're right. And as I think about it, so the man that abused me was a babysitter, so I didn't have male babysitters. So I just thought, in my small mind, like, oh, no way my girl's going to have a male babysitter, and I put my girls with people I knew and trusted.
Yeah.
I assumed all family members were safe, and their perpetrator was a family member, a very close, trusted family member. I also assumed that people who were Christians were safe. And I didn't have the type of education or awareness 30 years ago that an abuser can be anyone.
Yeah.
They can claim to be anyone. They can claim to believe in, safety for kids, and they actually they aren't keeping kids safe. They can, they can be family members. They can be people who attend church. They can be somebody that's very close in your family. And so there is a level of deception, and I don't think I realized, there was no education years ago on that.
Yeah. And it's no fault of any parent in terms of assuming that the people that are supposed to be closest to you are trustworthy. I don't know how many people who have many family gatherings would actually say out loud to any of their family members that there's no way I would leave my child with you. That would be a very difficult thing to say, much less do, unless you had concrete evidence. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Yes. And I think that's what's good about people getting educated, because then grandparents and that generation understand it's not that my daughter or son are being it's because they know the dangers out there, and they know that even people we know, love, or trust can abuse children. And so it's not that everybody's an abuser. We have more safe adults. I always say we have more safe adults than unsafe, but we have to become educated in prevention and be able to have conversations with adults and help them understand the boundaries we have for our own children, right? For our kids now that we're adults.
Yeah. I mean, and many parent survivors, become triggered even during normal parenting moments, or become one of the other things can be where they become emotionally distant because the vulnerability that you experience being a parent, it feels unsafe. And remember, you're entering into a phase of your life that you've never experienced before, so you don't know how it's going to affect you. You can plan for a lot of things, but when you haven't experienced something, you can't plan for everything, much less you can't plan how you're going to feel. So many become overwhelmed by guilt or fear of repeating the cycles, which is where a lot of the overprotectedness comes from, the hypervigilance comes from.
I mean, think about a little child. I think about myself when I was abused by this babysitter. If it's somebody in your family or someone that your family knows that has been abusing you, you're going to be hypervigilant every time that person comes around. Correct. Are they going to do it to me this time?
Yeah.
Are they going to put me in that isolated situation? And when they come by, what are they going to do? And
that's a survival mechanism. That's a survival mechanism.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. And so that fear stays with you. My fear almost escalated after I found out about my girls. It just got worse. Like, are you okay? Call me when you get home. Constantly thinking something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right. It's something we have to think about and control and go, okay, where is this coming from? Why am I constantly fearful something bad? Especially also after you found out your children have been abused. Then you can go through that whole thing of fear as well, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, one of the things, and Debbie, how do you feel childhood sexual abuse commonly affects parenting later in life? So, particularly with your own experience or maybe some of the stories you've heard, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, we've talked a little bit about that, like, being a helicopter mom or dad, right? Overprotective, controlling, because one of the things that you lose as a child who's been abused and you become an adult is this lack of control.
Yeah.
And so, you feel like if you can't control the situation, something's going to go wrong. And so, or you're not going to be able to help them. And so, my girls would have identified me as sometimes controlling. Now, I'm working on it as a 16-year-old woman. It's taken me years, but, I'm really trying to stop and go, okay, they're 30 now. But that control can become, it's something I have to think about because I'm so scared something's going to happen. But that overprotection, because we had no control when we were little.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think that's part of it, right? Mm-hmm. Lack of trust, overreacting to things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and because all of the unresolved feelings can resurface because, parenting, the kind of major three areas are areas of vulnerability, which can be very difficult when you come through trauma and then you're into an adult. You really struggle to trust anybody. So, even it can impact the relationship and connection you have with your child. The idea of affection, protection, can become issues as well.
It can. And you know what else? Lack of discipline. Mm-hmm. I'm remembering, a conversation I've had and with somebody who they were afraid to discipline their child because they were very afraid that it would look like the abuser that abused them. They become their abuser, so they avoided that discipline because of fear of becoming like that person. Because let's face it, abusers, can feel like disciplinarians at times and telling you what to do and controlling you. So that might be another.
Yeah, and even going on the other end of the spectrum is the involvement of a codependency, which can also happen. And so when there's the kind of emotional attachment that's maybe a bit unhealthy because you live, breathe your child and protecting them and making sure they feel loved and protected, you can go overboard to the point where you become dependent on your child for emotional safety. I've seen that happen as well. So, but a lot of it, what we're alluding to what we'll talk about toward the end is the importance of awareness, the importance of potentially even having scripts for yourself when you feel a familiar feeling that can be problematic or that triggers you.
Yeah, and that's why this show is so important because we're just letting people recognize some of these decisions and these things that we do, like. Not to beat us up. It's to help us understand that we are acting out of our own wounds.
Yes, these reactions are trauma responses. They're not character flaws, right? Many survivors become exceptionally compassionate and attentive because, they're determined to give their children what they didn't receive, safety, validation, and protection. But that doesn't come with perfection. That doesn't come with some where you're blindsided by a particular experience or an emotion, particularly if you're living in a country like ours where there's unfortunately many perpetrators that are out there, so it can be very, very difficult. Yes, and I think for adult survivors who didn't speak up for whatever reason, which was the perpetrator told them they have to go back to Portugal. They would, their father would kill them. No one would believe them because they're always bad. Whatever things that I've heard so many that perpetrators say to children to silence them, because the last thing a perpetrator wants to do is go to jail. So they're going to do anything they can to quiet and silence their victims. Mm-hmm. But it's this idea that everything in my life has to be perfect. I'm not allowed to tell, so I'm going to act like everything is okay. That's another spillover of child sexual abuse is perfectionism. Oh, definitely.
And everything has to be perfect.
Well, and that's,
if it's not, I'm out of control.
Yeah, and part of the perfection many times evolves because when you are a victim of a survivor of abuse, particularly sexual abuse, you inevitably it seeps into how you feel about yourself, your character, yourself, your worth, your self-worth, and so you feel always challenged to prove that you're good enough. That this particular, as they might interpret it as a flaw, which it's not, but they may characterize it as a flaw, They don't want it to be seen. So if they're perfect, then then this particular part of them can be, hidden.
Yes. And as my daughter said, my oldest daughter, she said, perfectionism is what she remembers. Like, she has to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. She did, and I was that way too. It's like we don't want our world upside down, right? We don't want to have to feel.
and it's also the aspect of the hypersensitivity to being noticed. For those survivors who don't want to be noticed, the idea of making a mistake might expose them. And so that's another kind of angle of where perfectionism evolves. Right.
Wow.
And so you expect it of your children too, because, they're obviously a reflection of, children are a reflection of parents. And so parents many times can take that very seriously. Or just the fear of, if a child makes a mistake, then I'm a flawed parent.
Right. Yes. And wanting them to be perfect, act perfect.
Mm-hmm. Don't draw any attention towards us.
Yes. One of the questions that you asked was, can trauma affect emotional bonding with children?
Yes, definitely. And one of the ways that happens is, there's the desire, obviously, to have a close relationship with your child, when potentially your relationship with your parent became distant because you were never protected, or you didn't say anything, or nobody did anything about it. And so the emotional attachment can go, as I said, it can go either the codependency on one end of the spectrum or the other end of the spectrum. There can be an emotionally distant, so you might feel most comfortable providing the practical needs for your child. And and do everything and anything. So there's a lot of practical needs being met, buying them what they need, taking them, helping them be involved in everything, being involved in the school system and making sure they're getting their schoolwork done. But then when it comes to things like affection, they may struggle with that, because affection could mean that I'm an abuser. I'm afraid that I'm going to feel like I'm violating their space if I go up and if I hug them, if I cuddle them at nighttime. So
that's pretty powerful. That's pretty powerful. When you asked that question to me, I was definitely going to say, and I started typing, like, I never experienced this. I had a great emotional bonding with my girls because I'm very, very close to my girls. We had our issues when they were 14 and 15, but I have a really close relationship. But in fact, I did experience this bonding challenge when I had my first daughter. I remember, and many of my friends have heard this story, the nurse at King Edward saying that Brittany should stay in the room with me to bond. She used that word.
Yeah.
And my response was to her, I have the rest of my life to bond with her. Please bring her to the nursery, and when she's ready to feed, you can bring her back to my room. Like, I didn't want her in the room with me. Now, some mothers would think I was a horrible mother to do that.
You were scared.
I didn't even think about, until you asked, I was going to say, oh, no, I had no problem bonding. But in the beginning, I did.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that also, Dr. Hancock, for some survivors who not only were sexually abused, but who lacked love growing up, and coupled with that being sexually abused, might be challenging for them to bond with a child, right? They may unintentionally try to protect themselves by disconnecting from their little one.
Yeah, and especially like in other types of trauma, there can be that emotional distance because you don't know how. It feels awkward, or you don't feel like you've earned it, right? You don't feel, you feel like you have to earn a love and affection.
Yeah.
And so if if that kind of reaction and behavior was a conditional type of situation for the child, for you, then you don't know how to just freely give it to a child that actually needs it. And if you didn't receive it, you don't know how necessary it is. When you've never had something, you don't know that it's something that's essential or important.
Right.
So,
Right.
and so when it affects attachment and bonding, it will, especially if the survivor learned early in life that closeness was unsafe and unpredictable. So some survivors become extremely attached to their child, while others may struggle with affection, vulnerability, or emotional availability. So the discomfort of expressing emotion because you never got the opportunity to not only disclose, but express how it made you feel. You had to shut that down to protect yourself and to survive through childhood. So.
Yeah. And let's not even talk about what we did at the last Survivor Hour show, or 2 shows ago, which the birth could have been traumatic.
Oh,
right?
Goodness, yes, yes.
So it might remind them, that whole birthing process, and I did talk about that with me. Like I wish I would have had a doula years ago, because when you've survived sexual abuse yourself and then you have your first child, that could be very vulnerable. It could be a very vulnerable experience. And that's an issue. That's also a point, isn't it?
Well, yes, because like having somebody there, particularly like somebody who's trained like a doula, what can happen is it can disrupt, because what's going to channel a lot of the emotion and the fear or the other traumatic feelings during childbirth is they can disrupt the subconscious thinking that's causing the trauma to resurface, the trauma response to resurface. So they can disrupt it by channeling your thoughts, or kind of like refocusing your thoughts on more supportive, encouraging, and positive thoughts, so to get you through childbirth. So it's not a horrible experience or something that you just want to hurry up and get done. I mean, obviously there's a lot of pain associated with childbirth, but with that pain, there's most people that have not been sexually abused are encouraged by the other side of it, which is they get to hold their child. They get to see this person they've been bonding with in their tummy for the first time. And, it's exciting once you see the baby, but for parents who've experienced trauma, that time may never come, and it may not come for quite a while.
Right.
Because now I have this child in front of me that everything's going to hit at once. Am I going to be good enough? So you think, many women who are experiencing childbirth for the first time are, many times do have fears and thoughts. Oh my gosh, this child's actually here. What am I going to do? Am I going to be a good enough mom? And that's just for just a typical mother, right? A mother who has not experienced any trauma. But think about that. I mean, so a person like that has experienced it, but then you have a parent who's been through trauma, and that feeling is amplified by 10,000 many times. Not all the time, but many times.
Yeah, many times. And don't even talk about postpartum. I mean, we women, we go through a lot. I just want to say. But I also want to, I thought about when preparing for the show is maybe also for a survivor, the child, another reason they may not bond, they might have affect their emotional bonding with their child, is maybe the child reminds them of the person who violated them.
Could be, especially if it was due to rape. If the child was a product of rape.
Exactly.
So
that's got to be so tough.
Well, especially if the child is of the same sex as the perpetrator. That can be a struggle. Even to you think about even at the basic, just seeing the child's body parts, can be traumatizing. So, much less just seeing the child itself. So,
yes. The other thing was you asked about, but I just want to say that when we think about bonding, everything that involves bonding is trust and safe touch, right? A lot of it is trust and safe touch. And those are the 2 exact areas that are violated when we're little.
Yeah. Those are the 2 basic ingredients. And if you don't have the basic ingredients, you can't just, it's not something you can just do. You can't just get up and do that like you get up and just walk. It's something that's developed through both parties' participation.
Yes, it takes time and it takes a lot of support.
Yeah. Yep. You know, I mean, but trauma, it doesn't make someone incapable of love, right? And, you know, many times it can be strengthened. You can strengthen emotional connection even if you struggle with that once you begin to understand your triggers and develop emotional safety within yourself. Because, you know, many times survivors don't trust themselves. They don't trust anybody, but they also don't trust themselves sometimes. So a secure attachment can be, you know, it can be built. Even after a trauma, you know, we can learn how to do things if we're motivated.
Yes. So true. Your other question was, what kind of parenting moments can unexpectedly trigger survivors?
Oh, yeah.
You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So triggers, they can happen during completely normal experiences. So for instance, you know, a very obvious one would be, you know, bathing young children. You know, that can create a significant trigger because, you know, there's not only the resurfacing of the trauma response from your own experience, but also the fear of eliciting a trauma response from their child or traumatizing their child, right? Because you think about that the mind becomes hypersensitive to other children. And so, there's this absolute style of thinking of, oh, well, you know, it's all or nothing. No, I can't see my child naked. I can't do that when they're an infant because it's the fear of, I don't want to be a perpetrator. I'm scared that I'm going to be seen as a perpetrator. So there can be that hypersensitivity. So you know, at bath time, that can be a trigger for sure.
Especially if they were abused during bath time, like that.
Correct.
That didn't affect me at all. That wasn't affected by that, but it could affect a survivor who was abused during that time. Somebody who was bathing them and touching their privates in an inappropriate way, or and
anytime there's the body exposure, anytime. So the perpetrator might have required the child to stand naked. You know, during adolescence, it could be when it's time to have discussions about puberty or sexuality. That can be a trigger. Any type of physical affection, medical appointments, anytime they have to discipline or raise their voice. Or the child
that's connected to power and control.
Right.
Discipline.
And maybe even when your child reaches the age that you were abused, that can trigger it as well. Or even leaving them with caregivers. Yeah.
Or you can be too punitive.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Because you have some unaddressed anger yourself. And so when something doesn't go right, you react. But it's really something from childhood trauma that's causing you to react the way you are reacting, right?
Yeah. I mean, all of these moments, they can activate the stored trauma memories in the brain and the body. So, you know, you physically have a reaction as well, even when you consciously know that your child is safe. You know, so there's one thing about kind of the intellectual side of the brain is working and working accurately, but the emotional side of the brain is taking over and causing the intellectual side to doubt oneself.
Yes. Well, let's talk about breaking the cycle. What does that actually look like?
So breaking the cycle kind of means, you know, becoming conscious of unhealthy patterns and intentionally choosing healthier responses. And this isn't something it's not like a light switch. It's not like you turn the light switch on and you can do it and turn it off and you can do it. It's something that you do gradually. So, you know, what it might look like are things like learning how to emotionally regulate, creating a safe environment for your children without going overboard or without isolating them, essentially, right? Teaching boundaries and consent, communicating openly instead of hiding painful topics or avoiding them. You know, seeking therapy. You know, so even if you've been through therapy, you know, to cope and to try and heal, when you become a parent, it can just, you know, revisit you. And so going to therapy again and kind of talking about how it's affecting you as a parent, it doesn't mean you have to start from scratch. It just means that, you know, you've got to maneuver and navigate around some of the issues a little bit differently because of how it affects you as a parent, not as an individual. So, you know, breaking the cycle doesn't mean parenting perfectly. It means refusing to pass down untreated trauma. Apologizing when mistakes happen, or choosing healing over silence. Those are kind of the ways of breaking the cycle. And again, it doesn't come without discomfort. It comes with a lot of discomfort. But many times I find that many parents are, if it's about their child or somebody that they really care about, there's a lot more motivation to change something that makes them feel uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
They may not feel like they deserve that level of, but if it's about their child, they'll go to bat for their child and they'll do anything for their child.
Yes. And I think also breaking the cycle is, getting educated yourself on prevention. It kind of helps to know, now I know these things, and because the people who raised me didn't know them, I can now learn what I need to learn to protect my little one in my life, right?
Yeah, and especially if they haven't had an opportunity to heal, either getting educated or doing a course or something, or again doing the SCARS training, that can be the first the first point of where they're healing as well. They're healing through knowing how to protect their child.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And we survivors who are parents, it's really also, it took me almost 3 decades, but it's a willingness to recognize and accept our scars, right? Recognizing our triggers.
Yes.
Recognizing our areas of vulnerability. I say 3 decades. No, it's 10 years and decades, so it's, sorry, like 5 decades. Understanding that we're human. We're never going to be perfect at everything. But I think it's how we respond. It's something that's very difficult for me, but just trying to pause.
Yeah.
Before I respond and think about and that is not easy.
Yeah. Why am I feeling like this? Making sure it's a me issue and not a them issue, right? So if it's a me issue, then I need to pause and work through this before I respond. And may not end up responding at all because it has nothing to do with what the particular situation was about.
Yes. Even something as small as being out of control, by the way somebody, one of our children do something and we're not in control of that because they're, especially when you have grown children, it's really pausing. It's thinking about, wait a minute, Debbie, where is this coming from? And it's hard to do. It's hard to do in your 60s, let alone when you're in your 30s having children.
Yeah. How do I? Oh, absolutely. It's hard enough to parent all through the stages of a childhood these days, and so being able to reflect, again, it is the pause, it's the slowing down, which is very difficult for many times a survivor to do, because in fight or flight mode, you're constantly looking for gaps or looking for ways to fill gaps of being forced to think about the trauma, So you see many times survivors are always busy doing something, filling their life with so many different things. And it's not to say they're not driven, but a lot of times it also has a secondary purpose of avoidance. And so you want to, try and make the decision that you don't want to do that anymore, because that can cause you to be emotionally unavailable to your child.
This is tough stuff, especially for young parents. Whether that's a male or a female survivor, having to, balance and manage through life, and then, knowing that they have these things that have come from their childhood, and that's why you said, what role does therapy or support play? It's huge.
It's huge, and the whole concept of self-awareness. So a person has to be willing to be vulnerable enough within themselves to admit that. I don't always get it right, and that's okay. It doesn't make me more flawed than another person because I'm human. So teaching them, that's why we say survivors instead of victims. You want to say, you want to see yourself as a survivor, but also as human. A human that is deserving of of love as much as any other human is.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes that requires being vulnerable with the people in your life who are going to support you and being honest. Because, you know, I'm okay with, you know, my girls calling me out on something, or, you know, but you have to still love me through it, you know, but, you know, really having people in your life who are going to support you, be honest with you, but love you through that.
Yeah. And, you know, and so acknowledgement would be definitely the first thing that has to happen before anything can happen. Acknowledgement that it did happen, and remember that it still can affect you throughout each developmental stage of your life. So the awareness piece is next, right? The awareness of how it shaped you, how it has affected your tendency to be fearful, how it's affected your behavior and emotional reactions to everything in your life.
Yes.
You know, and so
yeah,
that requires reflection. You know, it requires the ability to say, you know what, I feel like I'm being triggered right now, and not just stop there, because if you just stop there, you get stuck. And that's where things like, you know, support systems and therapy can be helpful. You know, so many times, you know, healing will involve things like, you know, learning how to attach in a healthy way. So that you don't go from one end, you know, you don't go from one end of the stick to the other. You can be like completely unattached, and the child, you can create an unhealthy, insecure attachment to your child, or a kind of a disorganized and avoidant. Or you go the other end of the spectrum, which would be a codependency, which is, you know, relying on your child to feel emotionally safe and secure by way of their response to you. And that's another unhealthy version. So we kind of try to look at the variation towards the middle, you know, where you have a healthy attachment, where you can acknowledge that you don't always get it right. You can acknowledge that mistakes are made, but you also can acknowledge that you are triggered, but knowing what does trigger you so that you can react in a way that doesn't harm or destroy any relationships that you've had or have. You know, you also learn how to build emotional communication skills. You're learning how to establish boundaries, healthy boundaries, not to the point where you're isolating yourself and your child, but boundaries where, you know, you feel that, you know, where you can kind of tell that sometimes you may feel triggered, but it may not necessarily be something that you need to or react in fight or flight mode. You know, so when a lot of times people say, you know, I'm triggered, you got to also assess the trigger as well to make sure that you're not going to overreact, because then the trigger never gets challenged, and many people are never at that point able to work through it or move past it. But also like
therapy or support.
Well, and even child, you've had two, right? So, you know, understanding child development, you know, who walks into parenthood saying, oh, yep, I took a course on child development. I know exactly, you know, what to expect and how to navigate childhood completely. You know, most people don't, you know, read about that unless you're in the field. And so if you don't understand child development, then it's, you know, you can also be triggered by certain things that they don't feel normal to you, but they are actually normal for a child of that age.
Yes, and a parent who's a survivor, this all might not come out until their child is the age when they were abused. Correct. I hear that a lot.
Oh, definitely. Because, you know, many times a parent can see themselves in their child. And so when you think about the vivid the memories of the abuse is likely still quite vivid, that and what they were like at that age, that the minute that their child starts behaving normally for that age, and potentially just like the parent, that can create a huge triggering response.
Right.
You know,
right.
One of the biggest things I think that's important that many survivors don't get to or don't do enough of is having self-compassion. So that's where you're not beating yourself up for, you know, for not doing everything perfectly, as you said, the perfectionism, for making a mistake, or for just not knowing, for having to ask for help, to having to ask somebody what to do. because, the expectations you have of yourself are unlikely to be anybody but yours. So.
Yeah. You asked the question, what encouragement will you give survivors who feel fear they are damaged parents? And, I had to process it a bit. And I said, this is what I wrote. Don't look at yourself as damaged. Look at yourself as scarred. But scars can fade and they can heal. And they also represent an emotional wound that may have been infected simply because it wasn't healed early. Many of us did not have healing. We didn't have therapy back then.
Correct.
And so we didn't have that opportunity. And I also wrote, make amends. Like, if you hurt your child emotionally or physically or in any other way out of your own childhood pain, saying sorry isn't about condemning yourself. It's just feeling convicted that you messed up because of your own childhood trauma. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a damaged parent. And whatever you do, you can amend it. And I've done that with my children. If your child is a grown adult and your own scars affect them in the way you parented them, affected them, or still parenting them, share that with them. Put it out there in the light.
Well, and I imagine
that... Space to...
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, kind of having that self-compassion, but just, the acknowledgement that, you're putting yourself above any expectation of any parent at all. And that's not fair. So it's always, I think, one of the things that's very important when it comes to awareness is being constantly looking at and being aware of what your expectations are of yourself to make sure that you're keeping them aligned with what's realistic. Because
but it's never too late to say that and to, and to be vulnerable. I think people think, well, the parents have to be perfect. No. We've had pain in our life, but, and we acted out of pain. A lot of people acted out of their pain. But it's never too late to, to fix it and to, be honest and to, because truthfully, I think, the parent is just one of the most important things to for a child to know that there's this unsacrificial love no matter what. I might have messed up. I shouldn't have. I was acting on my own pain, but I still love you. I'm sorry that if I hurt you or if I was, triggered while I was raising you, but I recognize that now.
Yeah. Well, and one of the most powerful
help with that.
Yeah, and one of the most powerful things we can do with children is apologize when you've made a mistake. Because it's not. I think one of the fears is, my child's not going to love me, or they're going to, if I make a mistake, my child's not going to love me. And of course, obviously, that's going to be sometimes can be a huge trigger for survivors. But apologizing teaches your children that it's okay to apologize. It's important to apologize. It's important to care enough about the other person's feelings to make them feel better. Yeah. Apologies aren't about making the person who's done wrong feel better. It's more that's a secondary benefit. It's more about making the other person feel better because you don't want to destroy that relationship. And so we're teaching, if we expect kids to apologize, we have to teach them how by doing it ourselves. I think sometimes parents are afraid that the child's going to use it as leverage against them. But, that I have yet to see that happen. So I don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's giving that, as you said, it's giving them that gift that they can do that. That it's okay to say sorry. It's okay not to be perfect. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to be acting out of our own childhood stuff where we're afraid we're not in control or fear something's going to happen or, it's okay.
Yeah,
it's not okay to hurt somebody, but it doesn't make you a bad parent. You're not a damaged parent.
Yeah. It's expected, right? And when you expect that there's going to be times when you get it wrong, then you actually will be able to deal with the mistake a lot easier. When you have the belief that making mistakes is wrong and it's terrible and I'm going to be abandoned or I'm going to be people are going to dislike me or not want to be around me or not love me anymore. Then you actually end up, kind of turning inward and struggling to have really any realistic expectations. Your expectations actually become a lot more rigid and higher, which just makes it worse. You know.
And when you, no, it's true. And when you ask the question, what are the signs that healing is happening? Self-love, right?
Yeah.
Self-love, or I wrote, breaking the walls of unfounded shame, beginning to respond differently to the things that caused you fear, caused you feeling unsafe, caused you unworthiness, caused you to lose hope, right?
Yeah.
Those are some signs that healing is happening. Sometimes it also involves, just having to love people from afar. People that are just bringing you down instead of up, still love them, but putting your boundaries up, right?
You have to, and it's being confident enough, and you need that confidence through some reassurance, whether it's through a loved one or through therapy, to help regain the confidence and to trust that the boundaries you're setting are reasonable boundaries, and to expect that some people are not going to be okay with that, or they may refute it or have a bad reaction to it, and being okay with the discomfort of holding your ground. So those are the kind of uncomfortable situations that can happen. And it's very hard to navigate that by yourself if you don't get some help or get some help with some feedback on how to conceptualize other people's dislike for our boundaries that we need to set for ourselves and our children.
Yeah, it's so important. And, I think another sign that healing is happening is when you respond differently to things that used to make you not respond in a healthy way, right? When you know that you're responding, you're pausing, you're responding differently, you're not, maybe running to unhealthy coping mechanisms or, things that will just numb out what you're, and that needs so much help and support. But just reaching out for that support, because we have so many great agencies in our community that help with that. But I think that's another sign of healing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. When you're able to, you'll feel the changes within yourself because you'll feel more empowered rather than silenced. And empowerment to gain empowerment is going to require a phase of discomfort. As you work through it and recondition your brain to redefine what healthy boundaries are, redefine what safety means, redefine what trust means, because you've locked in on it likely being a very rigid definition that's caused you to just push a lot of people away just to protect and just to feel safe. But it doesn't create necessarily a sense of long-term happiness, because when you're isolated from people, it's really difficult to find comfort and joy, all on your own. Healing's not perfection. It's awareness, right? It's choosing things like honesty over silence. It's choosing, that to learn new patterns of thinking and behaving. It's protecting your child while also learning to protect yourself emotionally without sacrificing relationships, all relationships.
Yeah. It takes intention, awareness, like you said. And I think the biggest, it's definitely support. But like you said, that's being truthful about things and not feeling bad that it's not making you weak. I think you're strong when you share those type of things. It's making you even more stronger. Because at the end of the day, our children are relying on us to be healed, because we don't, we have to do everything we can to be the best version of ourselves, right? Because, we're still their parent.
Yeah.
These children, whether they're little or we're their parent. And that's why it's so important to get people in our life that will support us, have people in our life that will, I have people in my life who call me out, but I know they love me. They're there if I, it's unconditional love. There's, and I think that's so important. And if I ask a question, I want the truth, and even if it hurts. And the same, it's important.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me a bad person. It just says, I have scars from my childhood, and sometimes those come out in my adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just the acknowledgement of being able to say, like, I'm not going to always get it right, but I can own my mistakes so that I can let them go. You can't let something go if you don't deal with it. It's going to be stored there somewhere. And that's why why you and I have these conversations, we want to help to educate, empower, and bring light to experiences that are often hidden in silence.
Yeah. So, as we close today, everyone, for all the survivors who are now parents, please know that parenting after childhood trauma is a climb. It is not easy, right, Dr. Hancock?
It's not easy for the average person, so it's not easy at all.
Exactly. And every time we pause, every time we protect our own child with passion and intention, every time we give our own children the voice that we may not have had, well, we didn't have it because we weren't told, let me know if somebody makes you feel uncomfortable, even if it's my best friend. Nobody said that to us, even if it's, somebody in the family that everybody loves, or, somebody who other people respect. I mean, we didn't have a voice. So, every time we give our own children a voice, we're breaking a cycle. We're choosing something different. The way we respond, we're creating a home where children are seen. We're creating that home where children are heard, where they're believed, where they can be safe, right? Yeah. And I think the other thing I wrote here is when we do all those things, and I'm talking about the young parents with little children, and these parents were abused as when they were a child. You're also, when you do all those things, you're caring for that little child within you.
Yeah.
Right? The one that deserves that same protection that you didn't get, that I didn't get, right? I wish I would have known that then, because we can't change the past, but we can definitely, change the present and the future. We can show our own children, and this is, a big lesson that I said to my girls, like, and I'm happy to say I'm going to be a grandmother, but what I said to my daughter is, one of the things you can do is show your own children that overcoming painful experiences is possible.
Yeah.
Break the cycle of abuse so that the next generation of our family has a better chance to grow up safe and whole. Don't do what I do. Share with your children about body safety and consent and boundaries. Share with the other adults in their life, what your expectations for your child. Let your child know that they can come and tell you anything. Create that home where your child is seen, where they're heard, they're believed, and, they can come and share anything with us, of anybody that makes them feel uncomfortable. But break that cycle. Break those cycles of abuse.
Absolutely.
Any last thoughts, Dr. Hancock?
What this kind of conversation kind of reminds us is that, surviving childhood sexual abuse, it doesn't prevent or disqualify you from becoming a loving parent. Your story didn't end with what happened to you, and it doesn't define your ability to love other people, including your child. So even if there are struggles, it doesn't mean you can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Love you. You're worth it.
That's right.
Thank you, Dr. Hancock. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you
You're welcome,
so much.
Guys. Well said. Definitely a great show today. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, thank you, Bermuda Broadcasting. And I just want everybody to know that our next Survivor Hour show is scheduled for Thursday, June 18th at 1:15. But if you can, stay on for this awesome song. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right, guys. Thanks for all the help that you provide for our community, guys. You guys are great. And we're going to listen to Little Miss Miley.